it's safe to assume YNW Melly's career is officially over, as the prosecutors in YNW Melly's court case submitted 66 pages of new DNA evidence against YNW Melly. This evidence was so big, the trial has now been pushed back to May 23rd, 2022. As stated at YNW Melly's last court hearing, the judge announced the prosecutors aren't interested in putting YNW Melly behind bars for life anymore, as instead, they want the penalty. The parents of YNW Juvie and YNW Sackchaser want full justice for what happened to their sons. As on October 26, 2018, at roughly 3:30 a.m., YNW Melly, YNW Juvie, YNW Sackchaser, and Bortland were all at a recording studio in Florida before heading home. Surveillance footage at the recording studio showed the 4 YNW boys hopping into their Jeep and exiting the block. The driver of the vehicle, being Cortland Henry, otherwise known as YNW Bortland, had YNW Melly sitting directly behind him. Law enforcement were able to use YNW Melly's cell phone that was sitting in his pocket as a GPS tracking device. They noticed that the Jeep was then driving on the side street before heading into a side parking lot where nobody was in sight, and it was kind of tucked to the side. Law enforcement believes a distraction was made to catch YNW Juvie and Sackchaser off guard, while YNW Melly in the back left seat did the act towards them in the vehicle. The GPS then tracked YNW Melly stepping out of the Jeep and walking around it in a 360-degree motion, where YNW Melly and Bortland roughed up the vehicle to make it appear as if a drive-by happened to it, as that would then be Bortland's excuse for why YNW Sackchaser and Juvie passed at the hospital. Law enforcement found casings from a firearm on the pavement where the Jeep was located on the GPS. The most concerning part of it all is they found the same firearm casings under the floor mats where YNW Melly was sitting in the vehicle. YNW Bortland then drove Sackchaser and Juvie to the hospital. Mind you, it took them 40 minutes to get their 2 best friends medical attention. Meanwhile, YNW Melly sprinted home on foot. It wasn't until February 13th where YNW Melly was then brought into jail for the act that led to Juvie and Sackchaser's passing, with YNW Bortland also being arrested for 2 counts of accessory and helping YNW Melly cover it up. Now, the case went quiet for a while. With the trial supposed to be starting multiple times, the prosecutors keep finding new and hard evidence against Melly, which keeps making it get pushed back. The new evidence, which is 66 pages of hard DNA evidence against Melly, shows that after running ballistics reports, all signs of who did the act towards Juvie and Sackchaser were sitting in YNW Melly's seat inside of the vehicle. Now, here's the photo of where everyone was sitting inside of the car, with YNW Bortland being the driver on this night, had YNW Melly sitting directly behind him, with YNW Juvie and Sackchaser on the opposite side of the vehicle. Using what is called the stick method, law enforcement used plastic sticks to match the trajectory of the firearm that was used. The trajectory from YNW Melly's seat showed a perfect match to where YNW Sackchaser and YNW Juvie were affected once they were brought to the hospital and had a doctor examining what happened. Also, in the new evidence reports, it claims that once the act was done inside of the vehicle, law enforcement were able to use YNW Melly's cell phone as a GPS tracking device, as I mentioned earlier. It's worth noting that the court files actually shows that YNW Melly stepped out of the Jeep and walked around the vehicle at the time law enforcement believes the act was done. Now, as shared in the rest of the evidence files, it states, and I quote, "These particular cell phones, which were both iPhone 10s, were on the T-Mobile network." And so T-Mobile has a very interesting feature where it will tell you the environment the cell phone is in. So from these cell phone records, I can tell you the exact moment demons got out of the car and staged the drive-by location. Now, YNW Melly had a cell phone sitting in his jeans pocket at the time. This one little iPhone could actually make or break this entire court case, as on YNW Melly's personal cell phone, law enforcement found case-breaking evidence on it. As found in this court file, it states, and I quote, "Then also, we have a video of Mr. Demons admitting to doing an act towards two individuals in the head. This video was on Mr. Demon's cell phone, which was brought to my office by Jameson Francis, and that is how we had that, and that is all of the evidence that Your Honor has." Now, this is a private video that the courtroom will not be sharing until the trial begins, but from what I've heard, allegedly, there's a 10 to 15 second video on YNW Melly's cell phone of him doing some sort of hand motion, pretending that he's using a firearm, and he basically admits that he is the one who did the act towards YNW Juvie and YNW Sack Chaser, and then holds up with his hands a firearm, which is obviously very huge evidence. Also in the vehicle where YNW Melly allegedly did this, there was evidence left behind in the car. This evidence being a yellow jacket. The yellow jacket was analyzed by the Broward Sheriff's Office's crime lab, and a report was then issued. Dated on September 2nd, 2021, the report indicates that Anthony Williams, aka YNW Sack Chaser's DNA, was a part of the sample, and that there are 3 other potential contributors. The contributor profiles are not eligible to be entered yet. Now, the prosecutors want to prove YNW Melly is guilty by using a DNA test, which in the court of law is very hard evidence to beat. This is why at YNW Melly's second last court hearing, not only did the prosecutors request the Broward County judge to force over YNW Melly's DNA, but they also asked for all of YNW Melly's body measurements as well. This meaning the length of his arms, length of his legs, and his body weight. The prosecutors are looking to create a model of YNW Melly's body so they can recreate the scene on what they believed happened. Now, YNW Melly and his lawyers obviously agreed to the prosecutor's terms, but in return at that time, they wanted a speedy trial. This means the court date would have been March 7th, but with the new 66 pages of evidence against Melly, this has now been pushed back to May 23rd. Now, that is all of the evidence and information that's currently out there regarding Melly's situation. If you want me to make another video when new stuff comes out, leave a like, don't forget to subscribe, and I'm out. Peace.